Hello guys, welcome back to the Beastie Room. Now we've been asked many times about heating our spiders and how we provide extra warmth. Now this is a little bit of a controversial subject really, regarding the heating of our spiders, and I guess the easiest thing for me to do is explain where I stand on the subject. I'm sure there will be people that will disagree to how I do things, but we get results. So that is what we go on, is the results. Now there is a very common myth, I think so, it's a myth within the hobby, that all this rubbish about if you're comfortable in a t-shirt, your spider is comfortable in that room. I don't agree with that at all. I got friends that walk around in the snow in a t-shirt and don't feel the cold, whereas I'm freezing my bleeding bits off, you know. So it's very controversial. And if you look at many of the spiders that we keep, many of them come from warmer parts of the world. We're in the UK here, so many of these spiders come from tropical, subtropical, even desert environments. Now even the desert environment spiders will try and stay away from the really hot heat, and they'll hide away during the daytime where it's a bit cooler, and that's how they regulate their heat. Now when we're in the hobby, we have to provide our own heat system. Now as you know, we heat our room, so literally we keep the door closed and we basically heat this room, and I can show you how we do that. We use here, this is an oil-filled radiator, and this is the one, because I know you're all going to ask me, what make is that oil-filled radiator? It's actually a DeLonghi, and it's the Dragon 4 Pro. Now it doesn't really matter. The important thing is, on a heater like this, you can Google this heater and get all of the statistics for it. You've got a straight easy on off, and you can have a timer there. Now at the moment this is off. If I switch it on, there you go, you can see that is our temperature, 24 degrees. So this will run on a thermostat and it will cut out. I can turn it up right the way up to 28 degrees if I want. That is really warm. We find 24 keeps this room around about 80 degrees, and it works really well. So this is our primary, what we use to heat our room. I'm going to turn it off at the moment, and that's because the reason we've got it switched off at the minute is because while we're in here filming, it does get very warm in here. It gets a little uncomfortable. So when I'm working in my room, I often will switch it off if it's on. You know, if it's pumping out heat, I will often switch it off, because while I'm in here, we can allow the room temperature to drop a little bit, just for that hour or two that I'm in here. And as soon as I leave, I turn it back on again. And the thermostat keeps this room at a steady 80 degrees. And that does us really well for both the maintenance of our spiders and also for breeding as well. Now, what we can do in return, in regards to our breeding spiders, if our oil-filled radiator is running on its thermostat at running at 80 degrees, the top of the room will be slightly warmer and the very bottom of the room slightly cooler. So if we've got spiders that like it on the cool side, we put them down in the lower part of the room, and if we've got stuff that we want to drop egg sacs and things like that, we put them up high. So they're getting that couple of degrees extra heat, and this is how we regulate it, and it works really well. Now, not everybody has got a designated room like I have here. So for those of you that have got your spiders, they might be on a shelf in the kitchen or wherever. You might have a little alcove in your living room where you keep your spiders. You know, we all keep them in different places, but it's still, to me, is beneficial to provide your spiders with some external heat, because this time of year we're quite, you know, it's warm outside, it's okay, it's not too bad, but as we go through the year and it gets cooler, our rooms are changing drastically all the time, because often while we're at work, to save on money, we don't have our house heating on. So we leave it all off during the daytime if there's no one home. And then when we come home, we flick our heating on. That means your spider has spent all day long in a cold room. Then it gets warmed up for a few hours in the evening, and quite often we switch it off again when we go to bed. So it then has the night time to go cold as well. Now, a lot of the theory that these spiders are quite happy at room temperature is purely down to the fact that spiders are designed to survive. And what this means is your spiders, without any external heat, that are going up and down in their temperatures, they are purely surviving. They're not living, they are purely surviving. So it's not the best way to keep them. Now, we can argue about this all day long, but you know, at the end of the day, we want our spiders to flourish. We see exactly the same thing with reptiles. It's all across the board. And, you know, many reptiles are, I mean, you take tortoises, for example, they have been kept for hundreds and hundreds of years, you know, and many of them survive. You get people go, well, I must be doing it right. I've had my tortoise for 20 years. When you look at that tortoise, it's in really poor shape. It is purely surviving. It's not surviving, you know, it's not living. It's not having a good life. So this is what we're trying to change now. So if you've got your spiders on a shelf,
this is for UK because we know that.
Yes, this is all in the UK. Different countries have different problems and different hurdles in which to negotiate. So in some countries, I get many of you guys in America, South America and North America, the way you keep your spiders is very different. So you have very cold winters. Then you also have very hot summers, but then your humidity levels change. So in some parts of the country you have a very dry heat and you have trouble keeping your humidity up. Other countries it's the opposite. It's very humid and you're trying to bring your humidity down. So we all have lots and lots of different little obstacles in which to try and negotiate while we're looking after our spiders. So I can only help you here with what we do in the UK. Much of this can be used all over the world. We can do it everywhere really, and just a little bit of common sense will give you the rest. So what we do here, if you've got them on a shelf, we tend to go for things like these. Now this is a normal heat mat. This is just a small heat mat. Now one of the things that we get asked an awful lot about these things is, quite often or not, when you put them on, when you touch them, they don't actually feel like they're working. And they do work on like a contact basis and they will warm up. Now with these, we have this one here is a 6 watt. So they work in different wattages. So this is only a small one. This is a 6 watt and this is a 6 by 11 heat mat. Now if we were, for argument's sake, we have our, say this for argument's sake, if this was our enclosure and we've got this heat mat, we would have our heat mat there, but we'd have our enclosure on the back like so. Yeah, we wouldn't have it fully on there like that, because don't forget this is giving out heat. So if we had it on there like so, our spider has got nowhere to escape that heat apart from the very front here. So what we would do, or what I would do, is I would have our heat mat like that. You see? So if we had 2 enclosures, which there's not many people only have one spider, it's that kind of hobby, you know, where we all end up getting more than we need. So if we have our heat mat, we've got 2 enclosures like this on the shelf, I would put that heat mat like that, but low down. And that way it's heating 2 ends and our spider can get away over here to escape the heat. Now if we've got a whole host of stuff, we can then go slightly bigger. So we've got our little one there, which is ideal for like 1 or 2 enclosures. Then we have another design here which is the same thing, but this is much longer. So but we would do it the same way. We would put it on the backs. Now if it's getting too hot, and we can't do anything, we can move our enclosure away like that. Just a little bit. We can put a space between the enclosure and the heater, and this will give a gradient because obviously the heat will rise here. So you'll find just literally that little bit will be enough. Now these long ones here, this is a 30 watt. So there's 30 watts there. This gets hot. It does get very, very hot. Now these mats are all designed for reptiles, and we use them for snakes and things like that. So that's a 30 watt. The other one was a 6 watt. Now, one of the most important things, it doesn't matter what heat mat you're using, but how do you regulate that heat mat? Now we've got a number of different thermostats here. Now this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky, and this is where people cut corners, because you can buy a basic standard mat stat, which is this one. Yeah, and it will tell you on there. This particular one is a Habitat, and it's a mat stat. So basically, what this one does is you plug your heat mat into that. So if I hold this up, you plug your heat mat. If I do that, I might be telling you how to suck eggs here, but we're going to try and make this as straightforward as possible. We've got our mat stat there. We've got 3 cables coming out of our mat stat, right? So we've got the mains cable, which is the one with the plug on it.
That goes in the wall.
We plug that one into the wall. Then we have our heater, which is this one. So we plug our heat mat into that. And then the most important part is we have a sensor, which is this one. And that is our sensor. So this sensor is what is telling the heat mat whether it needs to be on or off. Now you'll see here there's a gauge here, and this is our temperatures here. Yeah, so it's in Fahrenheit and it's in Celsius. So if we wanted 80 degrees Fahrenheit, we would be about 26.5 in Celsius. Now, one thing I will say with any of these is do not trust this gauge. This gauge, 9 times out of 10, is the most inaccurate thing you will find in this system.
It's not calibrated.
It is not calibrated at all. So what we do, we're going to have our heat mat is going to be here like so. We will have our gauge, our thermometer will be down here like so. That will pick up the temperature, and that will give us the temperature that we require in the box. Now we can also, literally, if we wanted to, we can put our probe inside like so, and we can tape it to the side of the wall. Yeah, and we can literally, and then just close it down again. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to tape that down, otherwise it springs up, as you can see. But we can tape it to the wall like that.
How would you get the accuracy of the probe outside the box to the inside the box?
It doesn't matter. If what we're looking for is the temperature within here. So if this is reading, we'd have it like here on the side, and that will give us an air temperature in here. We can also put a hole in the roof, and we can dangle it in there like so. Anywhere that this is going to give us a good reading. Where many people go wrong is they put the probe on the heat mat. That is a direct heat. So anything here is going to be a false reading, but your heat mat is giving this the reading from there. So ideally you want that a little way away from your heat mat, and that will give you an air temperature within that container. Now if we go, that is the mat stat, and that is your cheapest version. Now I know I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but I personally don't like the mat stat, because the mat stat works. It warms your heat mat up, and then when it reaches temperature, it switches off. And then when it drops below that temperature, it switches back on. So your heat mat is constantly going on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. Now, if it's doing that, I think these are more expensive to run, because it's constantly on, off, on, off. So you imagine it's you switching a light switch on and off, on and off, on and off. It's doing that all the time. And as we know, whenever you power something up, it requires a lot more energy. So these, I don't think these are very accurate. And I personally don't think they should be sold, because they are really a very, very poor way of delivering your heat. Now, it's only my own opinion, but I think the whole point of a mat stat is down into pricing. So a mat stat like this, we can buy for around about 20 odd pound or so. If we go for what I think is the best ones, and that is these, this is a different make again. Doesn't really matter about the makes, they're all very similar. And this is a digital pulse thermostat. Now, a pulse thermostat will average out around about 70 plus pounds. They are more expensive. But with a pulse thermostat, your heat mat is permanently on. So what it does is, when it reaches temperature, this regulates it, and it eases off. So it literally holds it at that temperature. So it just hovers on that temperature all the time. And it does a really, really superb job of maintaining a perfect climate. Now, they are much more expensive. And even though they're that much more expensive, still do not trust these gauges. This gauge is printed onto that plastic front case, and then it's a little screw which goes inside into the workings of our thermostat here. That is not calibrated. Now, I have done many, many of these over the years, and I don't think I've ever found one that actually was accurate with an external thermometer. So what we do here is we find a thermometer that is actually accurate, which we can use as an accurate gauge, and then we use our probe in the same way. We put our probe into our thing there, and then we adjust it. We forget about the numbers, and we adjust this watching our external thermometer. So we would put our external thermometer inside our enclosure. That will read whatever the temperature is, and then we adjust it to this, but we're adjusting this to coincide with that. Does that make sense? Yeah. So our thermometer inside the box is giving us our reading.
Says 60, but your external is reading 80.
Yeah.
60 on your box is 80.
Yes. So that makes sense. So we always double up. Now, one of the ones that we use, and these tend to be really, really accurate. These are a very cheap thermometer, and what we normally do with these guys is we'll buy a few of them, and then what we can do is we can set them all up on the same place. So if we wanted them here, we would set 2 or 3 of them up on here, and what you're looking for is you want them all to read the same. If one is wildly out, then you know it's reading a different temperature, so it's not accurate to the others. And we do the same with our little tiny black ones that you can buy on eBay. They come in from China, I believe, and they're a tiny little black thermometer. All of ours are in storage at the moment, but they're only a little tiny black thermometer, and some of them come with a probe on them, so that you can drop your probe in and get your temperatures that way. Others are literally just the box, so they don't have a probe; they just have an external thing inside them, and they read the temperature. Now, what we do with them, because we use a lot of them, is we might buy 30 or 40 of those at a time, and then we put them all out on one shelf, so they should all read the same temperature. But what you'll find is they will vary, and they might vary 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees sometimes. So what we have to do is we then have to put them in blocks. So all the ones that are reading, say 22, go in one pile. All the ones that are reading 24 go into another pile. We know that from the one that we have calibrated and we know is actually true, that's the one that we use. So if this one's reading 22 and this is saying it's 21, we will write on this one 22 equals 21. So we know that 22 there is actually 21 in reality. And the same with these ones here, they might be reading 24, 25, but it will be 25 equals 21. And in that way, we can move them around the room, and it's a simple thing just to look at them, and you know that, you can work out that you're in the right frame thing, even though your numbers are telling you something different. And this is one of the big things, is that thermometers are not all calibrated. So you just need to work them out. Another good one that we also use is the laser gun, which is literally, it just fires a laser and that will give you a very accurate temperature. They are really good, actually. We used to use them a lot with the reptiles. But yeah, they're a nice easy way of just looking around your room and you can see different temperatures. So going forward, we are looking at, if you can, always go for a pulse thermostat. It is the best thing on the market. They really are really good. They come in many different designs, but if you just Google digital pulse thermostats, you pick up the same thing. Now some of them have a timer in them, so you can have like a 7-day timer. You don't need to get that fancy. A straightforward one like this is all you really require, and that will keep your stuff nice and warm. Now if you're so we're going to regulate our heat using our thermostats. You must always connect your whatever heat you're using, always connect it to a thermostat. Never feel the need to just plug that in the wall and then leave that here, because that will just keep kicking out heat and it will cook whatever's in front of it. So always use a thermostat. Never just use the mat on its own. So we can use mats to do our enclosures in a smaller area. We also got another thing that we use here, and this is something we're going to incorporate into our new room much more. I actually like this way of heating. This is a very cool way of heating, and that is using this. Now this is a heat cable, and as you can see, it's literally just a green cable. It comes in all sorts of different colors. That is our probe there. So we use the probe in exactly the same way where we want our temperature to be gauged from. But what we would do with this is we would literally lay it out across the desk, and we would get to where we want it to be. This is very useful if you want to do a whole shelf. So if we've got, like in our room here, we've got a long shelf, we can lay this heat cable all the way out. Now it is still best to put this on the back wall, so we could literally tape it to the back wall and still use it using our probe. We would still attach this to a thermostat exactly the same as we would our mats. Now if you want to get fancy, we can literally carve a groove with a router all the way through a timber shelf, and we can lay it inside that groove. So that way, you're not seeing it, it's all hidden away. And then what we do then is, once that's all done like that, we can then cover it, and we use a silver tape. Put that in there. Now we use this aluminium foil tape. Now this is really good stuff. And what we can do is we can cover our stuff with this. The heat will still come through it, but what you'll find with this is, because it's aluminium, it molds to absolutely anything, and it's really nice stuff to work. If you do it wrong, you just rip it up. There's no residue, there's nothing left behind. And it also means that we can slide stuff over the top of it without it catching and things like that. So it's very good stuff. We use this for absolutely everything if we want to actually stick anything down. It's really good.
Wire underneath the tank? Because you've said about you don't do the full shelf depth, do you?
No, it's the same thing. If you're going to go right, if we're going to use our heat mat or our cable, whatever we want to use, if we want it to be on the floor, if it was on the floor like this, so we put that on the floor. I personally prefer them on the backs, but you can do them on the floor, but it's most important that you only have a small amount of your enclosure sitting on the heat mat. It's most important that you get this big area. See, from here, we've got this whole area here is not heated. This stays open. And this is the most important thing. Our spider, if we had it for argument's sake like that, our spider cannot escape this heat. It cannot get away. So what we eventually do is we cook our spider. So whatever kind of heating you use, whether you use the cable or whether you use a heat mat, you only ever, I think the best rule of thumb is to only ever heat 1/3 of your enclosure. And then that way your spider can regulate itself. It can get away from the heat and it can stay over on the cool side. If it wants to warm up, it can come back over here and go on there. If you get your temperatures right, most of the time they will sit with a heat. But, and this is another big reason why you go for your pulse thermostat, because it regulates it far more accurately. And even a max stat with it on and off, it's a much harsher heat. It's not as good. So always try and go with a pulse stat if you possibly can. Now, we also see online some people using heat bulbs, and that might come in the way of like these. These are a ceramic bulb. These are what we use for our reptiles, and these are a ceramic bulb get immensely hot. This is a 100-watt bulb, and this is 100 as well. Now, what I do with these guys, with the reptiles, I always go for the 100 watts because I like that extra power. But in conjunction with a pulse thermostat, we can regulate that right the way down to wherever we want it to be. And it can end up being a very gentle heat. But for spiders, these guys, they dry everything out far too much, in my opinion. And also as well, you could have this sat up here. You know, it doesn't give a lot of room for our spider to get away in this size enclosure, you know. So you could hold it up a little bit higher, but it's still drying it out really, really bad. So if you've got something that has humidity or anything, it's not going to last very long using one of these. Now, we also see online people using the red bulbs, which are they class them as a sort of a heat bulb. I don't really think there's much in that, to be fair. We have used them before in the reptiles and we end up throwing them away. They do throw out heat and they're very difficult to regulate. So I personally would not advise using ceramic. Any external heat that's sitting up here in the form of a bulb or anything like that, I would not use for your spiders. It's very, very poor advice for people to do these. I think it's really bad. Now, we have seen some companies online, you know, selling out starter kits, and they all have this sort of stuff on there. And I'll be totally honest with you, the vast majority of it is all about a sale and not the benefit of your actual animal or what you're keeping. So stay away from this sort of stuff for your spiders. It is not necessary. It's too harsh, and you will end up losing them. You know, you can make mistakes really easy with that kind of equipment. So stick with the mats and the cable, or if you can, use a heated room. Now, another way we can do it, we see many people with things like slings, and they're like, right, okay, how do we heat that? We got our slings in there and we're like, he could do with being a little bit warmer because I've had to put a jumper on today. So we're like, how can we heat that? Well, we've got our heat mat here. We can't really put it like that, can we? Because what's that going to do? That is going to end up cooking our poor little sling. He's got nowhere to escape. He cannot get away. We can't lay it down like that because we've got exactly the same problem. He's going to get cooked. So the best way to do this, anything that's in small things like that, or tubs like these, anything like, it's very difficult to heat that. So what we do, the best thing to do, if you look back on our previous videos, it's quite an old video now, we built an incubator, which is basically like a snake vivarium. Or you might have a cupboard or something, you know, we got doors on it that you can seal it off. What we would do in that case, or even if you've got a large box, I mean, crikey, you could even do one of these, what we keep our roaches in, you know, a really big, really useful rub. If you had one of them, I haven't really got one big enough to show you here, but if we had our heat mat, we could put that in there like that and seal it in there. Try and imagine this is a big box. We could seal it in there like that, and then we could have, it's just not going to show it, is it? It's very difficult to explain. Right, how can I explain this? Basically what we're looking at is a box, and we're going to put this on the back wall, and then our box is sealed. Now you can have glass sliding doors or what. Actually, this will show you. Come with me.
Oh, where are we going?
Come with me. Right then. Imagine this is our Balfouri communal, right? Now imagine this is a wooden box, and we've got sliding glass doors on our wooden box. Yeah? So what we do, our heat mat, we would put on the side like so. Yeah? And we'd stick it in there like that, and we plug it into our thermostat, and then we shut the door. And then what that does is that will heat this whole box up. Yeah? And we can get the temperature that we want because we'll put our probe inside here, and that will tell us what the inside temperature of this box is. And then once we reach temperature, we know it's safe. We can then put our tubs inside this box and our sling pots and things like that. There's always one cheeky Balfouri sneaking up for your finger. See that? He's always coming up. Look, not afraid of nothing, are they? So that is how we would do that. We would use the heat mat to heat the box. And if you've only got a few spiders, or you know, a dozen or so slings or whatever like that, that is the most cost-effective way of doing it. Now you can buy online, or you can make them yourself, a simple snake wooden vivarium. And if you've only got like say a dozen or so slings, bits and pieces like that, a little 2-foot vivarium with a heat mat that size will hold its temperature. And because it's all wood with just glass front, it will actually hold that temperature really, really well. You still want to run it off your pulse thermostat, and that will give that perfect environment for your little spiders to stay safe and warm. And the good thing is that vivarium you can put anywhere. You know, you can leave it in a spare room, or, you know, put it in the living room somewhere if you like. You know, it's anywhere you like. But you can literally enclose that environment within that vivarium, and you will keep your temperature up to exactly where you want it to be. You have control, and that is the most important thing, is gaining that control over the temperature. Right. I think we've sort of like hit most bits. And most of it should sort of make sense. So remember, if you can at all with your heat mats, put them on the back. If you have to put them on the floor, then make sure that they only cover 1/3 of your enclosure. Don't put them any more than that. Give your spiders somewhere to escape the heat should they want to. It's very, very important. They must be able to escape any kind of external heat. I think that is about it. Same with your water bowls, actually. If you're going to have your heater on the bottom, put your water bowl on the cold side. You'll also, another thing worth thinking about, if you're going to have your heat on the bottom, try and provide 2 hides, so you can have a hide on the cool side and you can have a hide on the warm side. That will give your spider a choice, and it will feel safe as well, because not all spiders like to sit in the open. So some of them might well stay on the cold side purely because they can hide, but it's too cold, rather than sit out on the warm side where it's comfortable, but they feel threatened because they've got nowhere to hide. So these are all different little things you want to look at. So if you provide them with 2 hiding spots, one in the warm, one in the cold, they can choose. It's all about giving them the choice to go where they want to go. And just remember, your spider does know best. You know, despite what we think, we can only provide what we think is right. Our spider will choose at the end of the day where it wants to go and what it wants to do. They do know best at the end of it all. Right. Can you think of anything, Camerady? Have we missed anything?
I think it'll be a nice one, this sort of video, is if people have got questions, like pop some comments down and maybe do a follow-up if there's any really good
Yes, definitely. So after you've hit the like button, please leave a comment. If this has been useful, let us know. If there's any queries that you may have, because it is a little bit, you know, to some of us old seasoned people, it seems very, very simple. But if you're new to it all, it can be a little bit frustrating and a little bit daunting when you look at all this stuff and you're like, oh my God, am I doing it right? If you're at all worried, leave a comment. We will always try and get back to you and hopefully help you out like that. If there's anything else that maybe you think would make an interesting video on how we do things, or any subject really within the snakes, within the inverts, anything at all, then put it down in the comments and we can see what we can do. If we've got the stuff here that we can show, then we will cover it and show you how we do it here. Right. So then, I think that's it. Just a quick recap. We just go with a pulse thermostat if you possibly can. It is well worth the extra money. Much better, much safer.
This isn't a paid thing either.
Oh no. We all this equipment you see here is what we bought and collected over the years. Yeah, we don't get any promotional stuff from anybody. I stay well away from all that sort of stuff. If I don't like it, I'll tell you. If I do like it, I'll tell you. And it is all down to my own personal experience of how I've got on with them. There are certain ones that I've used and I'm like, that was a load of rubbish and I just bin it. You know, I don't care too much about brands and things like that. I'm not interested. All I want to know is, will it do the job properly? That's the most important thing for me. And will it do it cost effectively? That's the other thing. Now, in terms of the heat cables, this is an interesting point. The heat cables, you can buy Reptile branded heat cables. Yeah, very cool stuff, don't you think? Well, I buy mine from the garden centre, and we are looking at, if you buy horticultural heat cables, they use it to warm their seed beds in the garden centres. That's what they use it for. And it is about 1/3 of the price of a Reptile one. It's exactly the same stuff, but it hasn't got the fancy Reptile packaging. So, you know, look around, think about it. This is dirt cheap, does exactly the same job, it just hasn't got a picture of a snake on it. So, you know, don't get mugged off with the marketing, you know, because much of this marketing is codswallop.
Frustrate you, Dave?
It does frustrate me an awful lot, because unfortunately I think people often look at equipment and bits and pieces and they're like, wow, I cannot afford that. That is just far too expensive. And half the time it's only expensive because of the marketing and the packaging and all the other rubbish that they put on it. And all you really want is something that does the job. If it does the job, who cares whether it's sparkly or not? We're just looking for it to do the job. Right, that's my little rant over with. We've been doing this too long and we get upset by these things. So don't get fooled by all the rubbish. You know, just look at it in a sensible way. And all this stuff is all out there. It's all easily enough to buy online. As you can see, we use a whole mix of stuff. So, you know, don't message me saying, what brand do you use? Because I use all sorts of brands. You know, it's literally whatever suits at the time. And that is about it. So if you have any questions, jot them in the comments after you've hit the like button. And yeah, I hope this little video was helpful. And don't forget, guys, be calm, be gentle, and love your spider. And I'll see you all soon.